Good afternoon, all, and welcome to our webinar. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. My name is Christina, and you will hear me throughout the presentation as I'll be netting some poll questions that we're going to go through. Before I introduce Amelia to you, our main speaker, I'd like just to go through a few things about our webinar platform, just to really allow you to get the most out of the experience today. First off, everyone will be in listen-only mode. However, to engage with the webinar, please use the on-screen panel. There, you can adjust your audio settings and use the question tab to engage with us. Please note that the chat section on the panel is deactivated, so do use the question tab to write any comments to us. Please feel free to post questions throughout the webinar, and Amelia will answer as many questions as she can at the end of her presentation. As I mentioned before, we'll be running some poll questions. So to record your responses, please click on the screen voting button when asked to do so. After the webinar, we will be providing a recording of the webinar on email. So we will share with you copies of the slides, a fact sheet to address any unanswered questions, and of course, a recording of this webinar. Now, I'd like to hand it over to our main presenter, Amelia Bottle, who is our technical consultant at City & Guilds for Hospitality and Catering.
Hi, good afternoon everybody. Thank you for joining us. Okay, so just looking through. Brilliant. Okay, so that's the agenda for today. So we need to discuss why we are here in terms of the technical qualifications for hospitality and catering. We're going to look at the differences between the qualifications, technical qualifications and the BRQs. We're looking at the design principles, our current offer both at Key Stage 4 and Key Stage 5, and what will be available from Key Stage 5 for September 2017. We'll look at the synoptic assessment, we'll look at employer involvement and the technical exam, a little bit about the moderation and approval process, and then we'll look at progression and finally the resources support that's available to you. As Christina said at the end, we should have some time for questions. If we can't get through all the questions, then we will get back to you with any answers, or indeed if I can't answer the questions today, we will get back to you with answers. Okay, so why are we here? Well, we're here because of all of the changes with the 14 to 19 education and the changing landscape. So it started off with the 2011 Wolf Report, which clearly seems like quite a long time ago now. We're entrenched completely in the 14 to 19 reforms with the new technical qualification. Obviously, the participation, the raising of the participation age for school leavers, so they don't necessarily need to stay on at school, but clearly need to remain in education until 18. And the greater use of technology, so the VALTAG agenda and the need for technology to be used that blended learning is fully embraced. So you can see there the timeline whereby we're having to introduce the technical qualifications. So these technical qualifications aren't something that we decided that we develop. They're something that DfE have imposed on us that we need to ensure that we put in place. And by adopting them, clearly what you'll be able to do is to be on the performance table in 2019. So September 2016 was when we first started running with the Level 3 technical qualifications, and September 2017 will be when we are able to deliver our new Level 2 technical qualification. So throughout the whole of City & Guilds, these are the number of technical qualifications that we've had approved. This is just for hospitality and catering, but throughout City & Guilds, you can see there's still more to come. We're very fortunate in hospitality and catering because all of our technical already. So what are the differences between technical qualification and the vocational related qualifications, the BRQs as we know them? So there's definitely now more focus on employability and employer involvement. There's an aspect of employer involvement that has to be completed as part of the technical qualifications, although this isn't anything really to worry about because most people now with the programme of study are already offering some form of work placement for their learners. So this being adopted will mean that most of the involvement aspect will be met. There are clear pathways to universities. There's UCAS points for Key Stage 5 Level 3 qualifications, thereby learners will have a direct route into universities. Obviously, apprenticeships and equally into employment now, with the fact that we have to have more employee involvement. So our offer starts at Key Stage 4, 14 to 16, which we've never really been involved with before, and this is the equivalent of one GCSE. We've got only one holistic synoptic assessment, which will replace all of the individual B tests which you find currently in the 7100 and the 7103. And there's only one end external exam as opposed to lots of individual unit-sized tests. The approach for quality assurance with City & Guilds is moderation, not external quality assurance. So we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail later on. Because of the lesson assessment approach, so only one holistic synoptic assessment and one end exam, there's an increased time to teach the learners to actually be able to build their skills and enhance their knowledge. The availability of generic and vocational resources is immense, and I'll show you at the end of the presentation that the amount of generic resources that City & Guilds have available, and indeed our enhanced vocational resources are much improved to what you've probably previously seen in Smart Screen and what's been available for City & Guilds. What most of you seem to need are multiple pathways for learners of different abilities, and these technical qualifications will absolutely offer that, starting at Key Stage 4, moving on to Key Stage 5 Level 2, and then on to Key Stage 5 Level 3.
Okay, it's Christina back again, and I'm just going to start off with our first poll question. I just had a comment come through that the webinar is breaking up a little bit. Just curious if that is happening for all. Are you able to hear us okay? If you're not, if you can please just send us a quick comment in our question box. As I wait to see if any questions come through, I will post our first poll question. Just watching that. You'll see that pop up on your screen. And the question is, on average, how long do you retain learners for? So it's an average of 1, 2, or 3 years. The results coming in. Lots of results coming in. That's fantastic. I'll leave it open just for another few seconds. Fantastic. Thank you for voting. And I will now close the poll. And share our results. So we'll see that it looks like about half will stay on for 2 years, and about a third on for 3, and about 15% on for 1. So we will carry on with Amelia. Thank you. Okay, so moving on. So what does assessment look like with the qualification? So what we have is, as I said earlier, one synoptic practical assignment. So it's externally set, internally marked by yourselves, and externally moderated by the City & Guilds moderator. So that being the case, there is no direct claim status for these qualifications, these technical qualifications, not because there's any problem with anyone having direct claim status, but just because of the moderated qualification. Then there's one end assessment, an examination, that's externally set by City & Guilds, externally marked by City & Guilds examiners, meaning that you don't have to get involved at all in the assessment of that particular aspect of the qualification. And then lastly, there's the employer involvement, which I mentioned earlier. This is only for Key Stage 5 and only at levels 2 and 3. So what will happen here is that you'll be asked to, as part of the approvals process, to submit a plan of what you intend to gain in terms of employer involvement.
We've got resources to support with that. You'll submit that, and then that will be checked as part of the moderation process at the end. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the actual technical qualification. So starting with Key Stage 5, Level 3, you'll see the design principles there. So you can clearly see that they're graded pass through to distinction star. And at Key Stage 5, the big change here for us are the UCAS points. Now clearly that's going to, the number of points that a learner actually gains is dependent on actually whether they get a pass or a distinction star, etc. So that's why there's a variation there. Now at Key Stage 5, Level 3, we have two sides of the qualifications, 450 guided learning hours and 540 guided learning hours. And you can see there the percentages of how they're actually made up in terms of theory and practical. Okay, so what do we have? So these are currently available now, and we have around 25 centres that are running the Level 3 technical qualifications. We have been since September 2016. This week they're in the middle of their external end exams, so that's all happening currently. So you can see there we have the 6100 30, 31, 32 and 33. Now the 31 is the 540 guided learning hours, so that's the qualification which covers the whole of patisserie and kitchen and larder, and that really would be in line with what we currently would consider as the VRQ Level 3. The first qualification, the 6100 30, was redeveloped from the Level 2 VRQ qualification. So that's a sort of qualification that does cover patisserie and kitchen and larder, but indeed that was redeveloped from the Level 2. The 32 and the 33 are those pure routes. So let's have a look in a little bit more detail about what each of those qualifications looks like. So here you are with the 6100 30. 450 guided learning hours. So you can clearly see what I mean now when I talked about the fact that it was redeveloped from the VRQ Level 2. If you're running the VRQ Level 2 currently, then you'll see some units which you recognise. We've added in some additional units there, financial control in the professional kitchen, and indeed the chocolate unit. Okay, so moving on to the 6131, the professional chefs. This is the larger qualification, 540 guided learning hours, and has the principles of food safety and exploring gastronomy there. So you'll see with this one, the 6132, the pure patisserie route, those two units from the last qualification, the units 314 and 317, are also in here. And indeed, there's two additional more theory-based units, 315 and 316. So this is the pure pastry route. And then the 33 is the pure larder route. But again, what you'll see are those units, 314 to 317, are identical, if I just flip back there to show you, to those units, the theory units for the patisserie confectionery. So what you could very much do in terms of progression is to sort of consider which qualifications will suit which learners. I've certainly got a centre currently running the patisserie and confectionery qualification that intend to offer next year the kitchen and larder qualification. So they won't have to repeat units 314 to 317. They'll just pick up those advanced skills units. Okay, and lastly, but not leastly, I know we often feel a little bit hard done to with supervision of food and beverage services, but clearly we do have an offer here for Level 3, and this is running as well around the country. So this is the 610330, and this was redeveloped from the 7103. So these are the units that are available within that qualification, and this one again, 450 guided learning. Okay, so moving on to Key Stage 4, which is the 14 to 16 age group. So indeed is a GCSE equivalent. We've got 120 guided learning hours, which makes up the GCSE, and this can be run in schools, or indeed you could be running it in colleges to support schools So this is the vocational route, which would be equivalent to a GCSE. Now, with the Key Stage 4, this is the qualification, the Level 2 Technical Award. So if you see award with any of the City and Guilds qualifications, it's a Key Stage 4 qualification. This is 120 guided learning hours, as I said, and there isn't the necessity for any employer involvement. So employer involvement is only at Key Stage 5. These are the 3 units that are within there. So you see food preparation and cooking, 60 guided learning hours, and the other 2 units, 30 guided learning hours. With this technical award, the thought process isn't that clearly a learner would come out as a qualified chef or waitress. It's an introduction into hospitality and catering. In the same way, a biology GCSE would be an introduction into biology. This indeed is an introduction into hospitality and catering. So the learner can make a decision as to whether they want to go to college and to study further, technical certificates and technical diplomas. Okay, Key Stage 5 Level 2. So these are the brand new qualifications that will be available to be delivered as of September 2017. So there are 450 guided learning hours, and again, all of the principles are exactly the same for these qualifications. Pass through to Distinction Star, and the requirement for employer involvement. So what are these qualifications? Well, we have them. 6120, so that's the Level 2 Technical Certificate in Professional Cookery, redeveloped from the 7100, and the 610320, the Level 2 Certificate in Food and Beverage Service, redeveloped from the 7103. Brand new for us is this last one, the 717820, which is a combined qualification for food preparation and service. So let's have a little look at what's in the actual qualifications. So here are the units for the 6120, and again you'll recognise with the boiling, poaching, steaming, etc., stewing and braising, you'll recognise the terminology to very much be from the 7100 Level 1 qualification. And here with the food and beverage service, again redeveloped from the 7103, so you'll recognise again some of the units there. But as I said, brand new for us, this one, the 717820 food preparation and service qualification. So you'll see there's just 1 unit, savoury products, 120 guided learning hours, and that one literally covers the whole of the sort of cookery in terms of larder products. So that's why you can't see anything separate for sort of larder. It's all stored within that unit.
Okay, it's Christina back for our second poll question. I believe that we have some aircon on that we're trying to cut out. I think it has been reduced a little bit, so hopefully that does help with your sound quality. And please do let me know via the question section if you are able to hear Amelia a bit better. I will post that. Our second question. Mouse is being a bit jumpy with me. Here we go. So the question that is going to pop up on your screen now is, how interested are you in delivering the Level 2 technical certificates from September 2017? So is it very interested, quite interested, not at this time interested, or would you need some more information before you make your decision? So questions are rapidly coming in. Thank you again for participating. I'll leave it open for a little bit longer. Fantastic. Okay. And we'll move on with Amelia.
Lovely, thank you. Thank you for doing that. So in terms of the technical qualifications, one of the questions that you might be asking is, okay, so what happens if if a learner doesn't manage to complete the examination and possibly, needs to resit? So the technical qualifications have 1 resit opportunity. So this year with the level 3s, as I said at the start of the presentation, learners currently in April are sitting their first end examination, and then there'll be a resit opportunity in June. So that will happen as well next year, although timings and within the year will change, and we'll have a look at those in a little bit more detail later. The practical assignment, so the synoptic assignment, there's just one opportunity to actually undertake that, but what we have is a synoptic window. So this year the synoptics were released at the beginning of February, and you've got until the 19th of May to actually complete them and then upload them onto our moderation portal, which again I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. So there's plenty of time for you to prepare learners for that end synoptic assignment. If they do need to resit, then they would have to do that in the following academic year. But the way that the actual synoptic is marked, there shouldn't be a need for that, and there are different aspects of the synoptic which we'll have a look at later. With the employer involvement part, there's no resit required. Essentially, we ask you to produce a plan, we then check that plan, and clearly if you weren't able to actually provide as much of the employer involvement as we wanted, then we would discuss that with you. Okay, so let's have a look at a sample of a synoptic assignment just so that you can see what type of things will actually be assessed in the synoptic. So here we've got the level 2 technical certificates in professional cookery. So this is just a sample. So this isn't the one that's going to be actually carried out next year. It's just a sample, and this is available currently on our website for you to have a look at in more detail. So you can see there, if you have a read through, that there are really sort of 3 aspects of this assessment process, of this synoptic assessment. So you've got the initial part whereby you'd be required to produce a plan to produce the 2 portions of this course meal. So there would be some work that the learner would have to do initially to actually produce the meal later on. So they might have to do some form of time plan, they might have to produce the menu, they might have to give some reasoning why for the menu, etc. All of these details and all of these things that I'm sort of talking about, then there would be much more detail maintained within the sample synoptic assessment. This is just literally the task. So after they've done all that planning work, they then go ahead, if you like, if you want to say that the planning part is A, then B would then be for them to actually produce the menu within the practical environment. So that would be their practical part of the synoptic. And we give you time constrictions on that and a variety of information to enable you to sort of actually undertake that with your learners. And then part C would be a written evaluation. So again, more sort of written work for the learner to do, which would occur clearly after they've actually carried out their practical. So if you like, 3 parts. It's all of these 3 parts which are marked by you as a centre, and thereby then at the end of the process, the whole thing is moderated. Okay, so the technical exam. So just a couple examples there of questions. So this is for a different qualification. So this is the level 3 advanced technical diploma in the kitchen and larder route. So a couple of examples there of the types of questions. So you can see there's a 2-mark question there, and you can see a 6-mark question there. So we've got lots and lots of resources available, which I'll go through later with you, to support you, to support your learners, to be able to answer these types of questions. So they're not multiple choice, it is all short answer questions. And clearly you can see that with the second question there, what we need from them is to build on the knowledge. So we're asking for explain, so it's the common verb. And what we've got is we've produced documents that will support you with explaining the common verbs to your learners to enable them to actually answer the questions fully. We've also got examples of exam questions that are on the website now that you can have a look at with the desired answers, so that should support that process.
Okay, so the employer involvement aspect that I've talked about. So you can see here the types of employer involvement that DFE want us to ensure that you're actually carrying out. So I know a lot of you run programs of study, and thereby you'll already be doing work experience or work placements, and they would clearly count towards the employer involvement aspect of the technical qualifications, so long as it's at the right level. So for example, if you're running a level 3 technical qualification, then clearly the employer involvement would need to be at that level 3. Other things that you can do, which clearly you may well have already done when you were running the 7100, is to get industry chefs involved in the synoptics. So I know some centres have definitely done that this year with their level 3 synoptics, the ones that have already started to run them. And I know others that have run 7100 have often got industry chefs in to provide some kind of feedback to learners. As well as that, you could get guest lecturers in to run masterclasses, etc. And again, I've seen that from some centres that are running technicals this year. They've had employers come in, maybe for the food and beverage qualification, and to talk about business planning and developing their business. So that obviously forms part of the employer involvement. And then on the chef side, clearly there's been lots of masterclasses, etc. What we can't accept in terms of employer involvement is anything that's generic. So you can clearly see their CV writing, information, advice and guidance, etc. And also what we can't accept is learners working in your RWE environment. So the work experience has to be carried out with an employer, because clearly that's exactly what we want. It's the employer involvement which will hopefully encourage further progression for the learner and some jobs in the future. Okay, so the moderation process. So essentially the moderation process is there purely for the synoptic, the practical assignment, because the exam is examined and marked. So the moderation process, completely different to the external quality assurance process. So what we have is that you will mark so we're setting the synoptic, you will mark the learner's work, you will then submit the marks to the moderation portal, and we've had a purpose-built portal which for any centres that are currently running the qualifications, they will be getting sort of training on how to use that portal. So you'll be able to upload the learner's evidence onto the portal, and then the moderators will go through the process of checking your marks and moderating. At the end of the qualification, when everybody's completed the synoptics and everything's uploaded, so for this year that happens to be the 19th of May, the moderators will carry out their moderation process, they will standardise, and then eventually there will be a marking meeting, a grading meeting, whereby then the final grades will actually be submitted back to you within your centres. So the massive difference, if you like, in this qualification is that you're not going to be grading, so you need to remove that thought process of pass, merit, distinction, and what you will be doing is marking using our marking grids. But all of this will be explained to you if you choose to take on board the qualifications, in onboarding sessions, additional webinars. There'll be plenty of support available to explain this whole marking process to you. So for us, with the technical qualifications, there will also be a moderation visit. So this year, the moderators are currently busy out there visiting with some centres, and the decision has been this year that what we will actually view as moderators is the practical element. So for cookery, the moderators are going out and they're observing the cooking part, not the prep, because you do have the opportunity to split the synoptic. So we would, as moderators, go out and observe the cookery part. And indeed, for the food and beverage qualification, then it would actually be the part where the service and the supervising of the service is actually occurring. So the moderator, though, is there to purely support, as part of their visit, with supporting you with how you are collecting evidence. So it's not to look at previous tasks, it's actually for them to support you with the process of evidence collection. And certainly for the first few years, This is the process that will be followed, and we'll be there to support you through the process and to help you. Okay, so there's some key assessment dates there that you can see. So you can see when the registration window opens, when we release the assignments, booking windows, etc. And these are the key assessment dates for 2018. So things are changing a little bit with the technical qualifications for 2018. We very much listened to our centres this year, and we've tried to be more supportive and more helpful in the information that we're providing, the advice and guidance, and also the way that the technicals are actually delivered. So you will have opportunities, you'll have the synoptic released much earlier to you, although you won't be able to discuss that with your learners. And there'll be differing examination dates, because what we'll be doing is reducing the amount of knowledge that actually forms part of the external exam, and that will allow you to sort of teach the knowledge earlier on, and then the examination dates will probably change. Okay, so just quickly the approval process. So it is a full qualification approval process if you're a centre that isn't currently offering technicals. And the reason for that is because it is a brand new qualification. And clearly what we want to do is to provide you with as much support as we possibly can. So in this instance, it will probably be your current external quality assurer that will come out and carry out a full approval visit with you. And they'll go through all of the support mechanisms available, go through the qualifications, check your resources, discuss employer involvement plans, and just be there to generally talk you through the process. The registration process is also on here, and for next year, so for any centres that want to run the level 2 qualifications, then the good news is if you're currently running level 3 technical qualifications and you want to deliver the new level 2s, then you will be given automatic approval for the equivalent qualification. So clearly if you're running the level 3 food and beverage service, you'll gain automatic approval for the level 2 food and beverage service. If you're concerned about any of those things, though, you can speak to your business managers or indeed the quality teams at City and Guilds. Your EQAs also know about the processes and they'll be able to advise as well. Okay, so progression for technical qualifications. So you can clearly see that our progression routes are now fully available right across the 14 to 19 to post 18. I already mentioned that there's a level 2 technical award, a level 2 technical award, sorry. So that's for 14 to 19-year-olds. And then you can clearly move on to technical levels, level 2 and level 3. And that indeed could move you on then to university, to apprenticeships, or indeed to employment. UCAS points. So for our level 3 qualifications, we don't have huge qualifications. So our largest one is by 40 guided learning hours, so that's equivalent to 1.5 A-levels, and 450 guided learning hours, which is the normal for level 3, is equivalent to 1 A-level. And you can see there the UCAS points that would be attached to that. And clearly the points, as I said before, will be relevant to the actual grade that the learners achieved. If a learner wants to enhance their sort of offer so that they can move on to university, then clearly they could adopt differing qualifications, and there's a couple that have been added to that grid there for you. So the extended project qualification, and most schools actually now are running these, which are linked to sort of their A-level provision, and then also for us we have a core math qualification. So if the learner were to adopt those qualifications as well, then they'd be well placed to then enter university with more UCAS points.
It's Christina back again with our third poll question. Just going to pull this up for you, and it is all about progression onto university. Just going to double check that you can see that there. So the question is, how many of your learners progress to university? I'll leave that open for a little bit. My mouse is playing games with me. Okay, I'll leave it open for another bit. Thank you for participating. We have about 80% that have voted. I'll leave it open and we'll share the results in a moment. Just getting that shared with you. Sorry, bear with me. There, that poll has popped up then. So it's about, yeah, at this stage, some have, very few have 16 and over, but generally it's about 5 and under at this stage. So I will just close that down, and Amelia will carry on.
That's interesting with the university, the numbers that go to sort of university, and we're hoping to sort of do further work clearly with the technicals now that they're embedded, and the hope that further people will take on board the level 3 technicals this academic year. Then we'll be doing more work with universities to get our qualifications recognised. I am aware that lots of learners do go with MVQs and with VRQs to universities, but clearly we're wanting to sort of ensure that universities will more widely accept our technical qualifications as well. So that's interesting. Fantastic. Okay, so let's move on to resources. Okay, so the resources that are available, we have many generic resources. There's a TechBack page as part of our Teaching Guild's website, and that's where you'll find lots of the guides, the videos that are available, the academic planners. There are videos that explain the moderation process, that explain how to go through the quality approval process, and that explain the whole assessment process. We also have key guidance documents, which are marking and moderation and employer involvement guide, as well as teaching, learning and assessment. These can be found in the Centre Document Library as well. The marking and moderation guide explains the whole process of marking and moderation, and the teaching, learning and assessment gives you ideas on how to prepare your learners ready for the end examinations. Both documents, as well as the employer involvement, are really well produced, and they're very easy to read. So I would absolutely, if you're interested in running the technicals, advise that you download those documents and you have a read, because it does explain the process in lots of detail. And there are the actual sort of guides, so that you can clearly sort of see them there. There's also a moderation portal centre guide, so that's for our new moderation portal. And as I said, our centres are currently undertaking some training on how to use the portal. So there's a guide there that explains how to use the online platform. Oh, sorry. Double-clicked, wrong place. So specific to our vocational area, we have an enhanced smart screen package specifically available for 6130. So that's the first of the qualifications. So that's available with tutor resources, including schemes of work, PowerPoints, sample assessments. It's also got videos on there for learners to watch, and then they can answer sort of online questions. You can attach that package to your own Moodle system, so it can be accessed by learners through there as well. We're also developing for the level 2 professional cookery resources, so what we would, I suppose, term as sort of flat screen, smart screen resources, which are sort of not enhanced in terms of digital, but they will still have the schemes of work, the PowerPoints available, and some sort of learned tests, etc., to work through. And again, we're also developing the same type of resources for the other level 3 qualifications that aren't covered in the enhanced package. As well as that, on the City and Guilds website now, we have handbooks for every single qualification that I've talked about. So they're on the usual qualification pages. Underneath those, we have sample synoptics, so an idea of a synoptic for each of the qualifications, and indeed sample exam questions with desired answers. So you'll clearly be able to see the type of questioning that will occur and the type of answers that we would expect that your learners would be answering. So these are the units, so this is for the 6130, these are units that are covered in the enhanced smart screen package. And if you want to have a look at that, then you can contact your business manager and they'll be able to sort of give you access to have a look at that package.
Before we get to final questions, Christina's back, and I'm just going to answer our final poll question. And that will pop up on your screen. Which technical qualifications would you purchase City and Guilds teaching resources for? So this would just be really helpful for us to know if there are additional resources that you would be interested. And I'll leave that up as responses are flooding in. Thank you again for participating. I'll leave it open for another few seconds. Oh, responses are still coming in, so I'll leave it open. And I will now close the poll. And results will pop up for you. So it looks like we have a mix across the board.
Perfect, thank you for that. That will really help us, because clearly what we want to be able to do is to provide you with sufficient resources to support you and to support your learners. So that's great, thank you. Okay, so it's question time. Do we have questions?
Yes, we do have some questions coming in.
Okay.
So questions, while B-tests or while tests are no longer vital, is it advisable to test students internally throughout the year and record this information to show that the students have improved? So kind of the formative assessment piece.
Yeah, absolutely. That's vital, really. So no, you're quite correct. B-tests aren't there anymore, but yes, absolutely vital that you do carry out some form of formative assessment, really, to sort of so that you know where your students are and what sort of additional support that you need to give them. Also, the formative assessment process, if you start to use our marking grids, so if you look at our sample synoptics and you use those as a mock, if you like, or break them down or design your own that look similar, that will then enable you to use our marking grid and get yourself and your learners sort of used to that whole process. That will then enable you as a centre to become standardised, which will mean the whole moderation process will be so much smoother. So yeah, a really good idea.
Okay, next question. Which qualification would my current level 2 students take at level 3?
Okay, so people this year have had a variety of different thoughts about that. So some centres decided not to run the 6130, which I suppose, which is the redeveloped sort of level 2, so I understand the reason for the question. And they've gone straight on and run the sort of 540 guided learning hours one, the 6131. So that would then be perfectly possible, because you'd be sort of moving from level 2 to a level 3 qualification. Equally, you could offer the 32 or the 33, so the pure pastry route or the pure larder route. Other centres decided that because they were moving to a brand new qualification, what they would actually do is to offer the 6-130, and although similar to the current BRQ Level 2, it is a different type of assessment methodology. So therefore they wanted their learners to have the sort of facility to be able to already have acquired some knowledge, and really it would just be the assessment process that was changing for them really. So some centres did decide that they would run with the 6-130. So across the board we've had sort of different opinions as to which qualifications.
Thank you, Amelia. Next question is, would it be better to deliver all new technicals this year instead of the new and old BRQ?
Possibly. Clearly, in terms of learner progression, the best thing, I suppose, is to start with the qualification from the start. So in an ideal world, we would have started at Level 2 and moved on to Level 3. Unfortunately, that wasn't the way the DFE sorted it for us, so we ended up having to start with Level 3 qualifications first and then offer Level 2 this year, so it was kind of a little bit back to front. There were some centres this year that said that some learners had struggled with that initially because they were used to either MVQ or BRQ routes. Other centres, it didn't seem to matter, and I've certainly got one centre that next year are adopting the technicals that have been preparing their learners currently. They're doing the BRQ system, and they've been preparing them by looking at the marking grid and the different type of assessment methodology now, getting them ready for the new technicals. So centres have done, and are doing a variety of different things. Clearly your decision is, do we start and just do Level 2 in September 2017 and then carry on with other Level 3s and then adopt the Level 3s the year after, or do we just do the whole thing and sort of move to Level 3s for our current Level 2 BRQ students? And clearly that's what centres have done this year, that have adopted the Level 3s. So the choice is yours.
Thanks, Amelia. Does the learner choose the dish within a synoptic test, or are they set?
Generally, they're all sort of slightly different, so it would be definitely worth going onto the website and pulling up the sample synoptics and having a look. But yes, generally, the learner can select sort of either the dish in some of the Level 3s or certain aspects of the dish. So yeah, I would definitely go and have a look, and then you'll be able to see the sample synoptics in more detail.
Okay, next question. Do centers have to run the Level 2 and Level 3 technical qualifications from September 2017, or can they stay with 7100-12 and 7100-81?
As far as I'm aware, you're still able to run your current routes, and funding is available for those, so no, you don't necessarily have to. It really is a matter of whether you're sort of interested in being on the 2019 performance tables, because all of these qualifications are, and indeed, sort of how you feel about it. Clearly, the year after, it's looking like you will have to adopt the technicals, so it's your choice still at this point in time.
Okay. And will centers be sent the 2018 scheduled dates released via email?
Yes, they will, absolutely, and that's sort of being looked at now, so they will come out to you.
If learners have completed a BRQ1 this academic year, which technical certificate would be the best progression route for them?
If they've completed, so I assume we're sort of, well, yeah, we are sort of talking about whether it be a food and beverage service or whether it be a professional cookery, then, sorry, I'm just sort of rereading the question. Which would be the best progression route for them? If they've done a level, it really is going to, again, depend on the actual learner, because because clearly what you could do if they've done a level 1 is they could move on to the 6-130, which would be equivalent of the old VRQ level 2. So if we're talking about professional cookery, this is, then they could do that. Equally, they could do the level 2, the 6-120, and then move on to a level 3. So, you know, maybe that question best answered dependent on how long you expect to retain your learner for, really. But any of these things, you've got my sort of details there, so if you want to come to me with any further questions and I can answer in more detail in terms of which qualifications they're currently doing and what they're sort of thinking, then we can sort of talk about that in more detail. And indeed, we're just about to sort of send out a newsletter to all the centres that's advising of events that we're running around the country. So, you know, I sort of invite you all to sort of attend one of those events, and then we can go through these things in more detail.
Okay. You touched on this earlier, Amelia, but the question has come up again. Will the 7100, 11, and 12 be phased out? So I know you mentioned the 11, but about the 12 as well.
I would imagine eventually that will be yes, probably, only purely because in terms of the qualifications that we offer, we have to have a sort of number of people that are running them, and I would imagine that you will be sort of pushed down the technical route, so to speak. So eventually one would assume, yes, the 7100s won't be around any longer, unless with government changes, everything goes completely different.
Okay. And by chance, do you happen to know the cost of the digital learning platform Smart Screen for hospitality and catering are offering?
I don't know. That's something that you need to speak to your business manager about, because as a centre, if you're offering, you know, if you're running sort of Smart Screen in lots of other occupational areas, then indeed perhaps you could get a better deal by speaking to your sort of business manager. And if you need any help with who your business manager is, then again, come back to me and I can find that out for you.
Okay. And what do centres need to know regarding paperwork? So what will they need to submit for the 60-133 technical synoptic, and how many of the learners will need to be IQA?
So in terms of, is that for approval process that we're asking? Is that the approval process that you want to know about? I'm going to leave you to come back to me on that, because then I'll be able to answer that a little bit better.
Can the 31 be delivered in a year?
That's entirely up to you, but yes, most centres seem to be doing that because they can't sort of obviously acquire funding for any longer. And we certainly have got centres that are running 31 in a year this year.
Okay. In the current qualification, is it advised not to stretch students too much? And can this be done now if a student is capable and shows greater skills than required? As my has been told me for an extended learning I was giving.
I'm not quite sure what you're meaning by that question. Do you mean by that, for example, you were getting, you had level 1 learners and you were MVQ level 1 learners, and you were basically assessing to sort of level 2 standards? Is that sort of what you're thinking? Because maybe they're in the RWE and they were being assessed more in line with level 2. Is that what you're meaning by that?
And okay, the candidate who joined us for the previous question, we had a bit more detail that it's for making internally for the question of the paperwork that is required for the 60-133. So the centre who joined us.
Okay. So how many of the? Okay, so in terms of the IQA process, because it's sort of moderation, then the quality assurance process has changed somewhat. So I'd advise you to have a look at the marking and moderation guide, because that will give you sort of more details about the type of quality assurance process. It's really more about standardisation. So as markers, you'll be marking the learners. If there's more than one tutor in a centre, then indeed what will happen is it would be encouraged really by us that there was more than one person sort of marking, and then you went and you sort of standardised that process. Again, as I said, more details in the marking and moderation guide, and the visiting moderator as well will be able to support you with that process, and that's something that we'll be discussing in more detail at the events that we'll be running around the country.
Okay, and the final question that's come through is, with the technical qualifications, can the industry still be involved with the synoptic assessment?
Yeah, absolutely, and we definitely encourage that because that forms part of the employer involvement. So that's something that you can absolutely, when you apply for approval, put onto your employer involvement planner, and yeah, they can be sort of there to support part of that process. So you would be able to sort of document that as part of your employer involvement.
Okay, just skimming through questions, and there is one final one. For the preparation and service, the time scales for the service is 3 hours. Our service is 5 hours long. Will this be an issue as the client, as it is client focused?
So are we talking about the sort of level 2, the 717820 there? If we are, then you'll need to sort of have a look at the way that this sort of services run, etc. for that synoptic. I mean, that's purely what we've got there is a sample synoptic. So that's not the actual one that will be sort of that you'll be asked to run. But in terms of sort of service time, then you know clearly that can be sort of looked at. It shouldn't be a problem at all.
Okay, and we had one final question come through. Would my current level 2s complete the 6131?
Yes, but absolutely they could. As I answered sort of earlier, I think I sort of answered a similar question. Some centres have chosen not to do that, to get them to move on to the 6130 because it's still deemed as a level 3 qualification. Other centres have thought, well, that won't stretch the learners enough, so they've gone straight into the 6131. So that's your choice. Something that you need to sort of have a look at your cohort of learners. To see what you think that they'd be able to manage.
Okay, thanks, Amelia. We've gone through what I think are all the questions. Again, we will comb through these and get them in writing. So if by chance we have missed any of the questions, they will be written up, answered, and we will email across to you as well a link to the webinar so you can share it, or if you need to get any of the information again, we will share with you as well a copy of the slides and the questions and answers that have come through today.
Thank you very much, everyone, for participating.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks.
Take care.